everybody. Welcome back to Talkin Wellness. My name is Christian.
It's your boy, Michael.
And I'm Kayla.
There.
What?
We're missing.
Hey.
And I'm Brendan.
There you go. So this is Brendan Casey. He's going to be joining the podcast as one of the hosts. So we're super excited to have him. How you doing, Brendan?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm
Awesome. Well, you guys might remember Brendan from two wonderful episodes that Michael and I did without Kayla here, actually, where we talked about filmmaking and how filmmaking can help us for our wellness. So we fell in love with Brendan at that moment, and we've been friends ever since. And we were like, we need to have him on the podcast. He has so much knowledge when it comes to the world of podcasting and recording and stuff like that. You know, you guys saw it.
Because he's funny. I thought it would
That
be,
is true.
Yeah.
That's a bad precedent to set.
Don't feed his ego. What are you talking about? What are you doing? Don't feed his ego.
That was my vote. I said, well, he's really funny. But yeah, you got a lot of gifts and talents too. That's just my favorite one.
Kayla only approved because you're funny. I just want you to know that. So we're so happy to have him. So we thought, as a great way to introduce you to Talkin Wellness, we would do an episode of My Story Matters with you, so that people get to know you a little bit. Every single one of us has had an episode of My Story Matters already on the podcast, so you guys can go back and see those. But we thought, why not have one with our new co-host, Brendan Casey? All right, are you ready?
Very ready. Yeah.
All righty. So we're going to be asking you questions. All we ask is that you share your story, your life, your recovery journey, so that hopefully inspire other people in their recovery journey and in their walks of life that they're trying to achieve wellness, right? Alrighty. So we want to just start off straight off the bat, asking you a general question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Yeah. So I'm from Hollywood, right where we currently are located. I grew up here, and I have a big family. And
how old are you?
I'm 27.
27 years in Hollywood?
Wow.
I'm pushing 30.
Your whole life in Hollywood.
Way to
Just about.
way to put him on the spot.
So I'm originally from here, but my whole family is from the Northeast, so Massachusetts.
Okay, cool.
So
I like to ask that because you could be born here and then your whole family's from a completely different state.
That is true.
Two members
That's
of
all
my
mine
family.
is. Like, none of my family's here, so.
Right. Yeah. No. Most of my family's in Massachusetts.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
My
Cool.
uncle and my cousin.
Do you
lives
feel
there.
like you have a lot of that culture upbringing coming here? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
You can't get rid of it when it comes to like the Massachusetts culture.
What is that? What is Massachusetts culture?
I mean, it's kind of like.
is that like the
Northeast-
Boston?
Oh, 100. Yeah, we're about 45 minutes south, of Boston, like where my whole family's from, and it lingers even like when it comes to sports, when it comes to how you talk, how you act.
Yeah. Forget about
we
it.
have a few people
Boston.
here that are from Boston, and you can kind of tell.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Almost
absolutely.
immediately. So
Absolutely.
That's kind of
That's one of those accents that are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Well, not lucky. I love the accent, but I didn't. My family doesn't have thick accents, like except for the ones that are still there.
Yeah.
So
Of
it kinda
course.
skipped over. My parents grew up there, but they still don't have it. So
What would you say is like the coolest thing about that culture that has,
Yeah.
I guess, stuck with your family or that you grew up with?
I think it's just the way we treat people. Honestly, yeah, it's the way we treat people is
They do have much more of a family culture, eating on Sundays together kind of bond.
Yeah, they call it supper. So
Yeah,
that's-
exactly.
Ooh,
So it's
supper.
It's much more of that Guido, like not Guido, but like I remember Jersey Shore. It's not Boston, but it's very similar culture dynamics. Where
Are you a
it's
Guido?
Very family.
I'm just kidding.
I'm partly Italian, so I wear. My
Hey, from the Northeast, Italian. I don't know.
I'm mostly
Someone
Irish.
needs a tan, and they could be called a Guido.
I know. I can't tan well, and that's the Irish in me. I'm mostly. My family's mostly Irish. My mom's side is Italian. So,
Okay.
I have some of that. My grandmother.
So would you say you're a Massachusetts boy or a Florida boy?
Oh, Florida. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I have roots in Massachusetts and some of the culture there, but most of it is Florida. I'm a Florida man.
Yeah.
So
You're a
Not
Florida
a boy.
man. Amen.
He's a Florida
Amen.
man.
Amen.
Graduated.
Yeah.
The wild Florida stereotypes.
Yeah, there's definitely a point in once you move to Florida, because at first you don't feel it. Talking about of someone who's been here for a few years, at first you don't feel it, but there's a point where you feel the turn from any other state person to Florida person. It's like a weird change.
Yeah.
You know, when you're like, oh yeah, you just got to get on that freeway, and then you're like, oh no, it's starting to happen.
You see a few couple things that are you see those only in Dade posts, and you see a few of those in real life, and you're like, oh, I'm from Florida.
No, oh yeah, I'm here. I made
I'm
it.
from here. I'm from here.
Bro.
My friends have made only in Dade. That's
Oh
funny.
yeah, my friend did too. When there was a huge like storm one time, he had a bucket and he was throwing water like out of his yard into the street, and it wasn't doing anything. So they put him on the news. It was hilarious, bro.
Oh no.
And he dropped the bucket, throwing it. It was the
My brother-in-law recorded when Tyreek Hill, that whole situation.
Oh,
He
no
was the one-
way.
yeah, so that hit
That's
only in Dade.
crazy.
Then one of my friends drove off of her apartment thing into the water and was like, her car was like, and she had to get on top.
That's
she
so
made only
crazy.
in Dade.
Kayla, what kind of friends do you have? What is this?
I'd be like, oh,
She's
yeah,
like an
no.
influencer or an
I'd be like,
reporter.
sharing their post. You know, my friends are famous. Only in Dade.
Check out my friend who just put their car in the water. Yeah, that's my friend.
for all the right reasons.
For-
too.
yeah.
Famous for all the right reasons.
So, kind of moving a little bit along here, Brendan, tell us a little bit. So, obviously, everybody here in the RCC, which stands for Recovery Community Center, everybody who works here kind of has a history of recovery in their life, right? A wellness journey. So, we want to hear a little bit about your wellness journey, kind of like things that happened in the past that led you to decide, hey, I want to choose recovery as a path.
Right. Yeah. So I've always kind of struggled with a few things when it comes to anxiety, depression. Being officially diagnosed when I was in my late teens, and it's always been so helpful for me to like be mindful of my recovery, and like going to therapy is something that is very like, just it set me on a different path completely. So from a young age, like knowing who to talk to, what to talk about, that kind of thing. So it was just the general mindfulness, like just being aware of the stuff that I was going through and not choosing to.
Where did that come from? Like the not to have to use therapy, but like where did you feel like you at one point in life that you're like, oh, I need therapy in order to get through certain things? Like what were those things that led to that?
Yeah. There was certain moments that just kind of were apparent where I couldn't like cope with things, and just kind of needing those extra skills that at the beginning you don't know, right? And that's something I've learned while working here is kind of those ways to manage your wellness and manage like the things that keep you well. I didn't have that. I didn't have those stark, moments where it was like, this is the thing that you need to do. But it led to therapy just because I don't know. I felt like it was a professional that could help me with those.
So do you feel like there wasn't necessarily one big moving block thing that was like, oh, I need help, or it was more like throughout your whole life you felt like you didn't have the necessary tools to deal with a multiple of things that led up to like, oh, I'm feeling a certain way?
That's a good question, because it was sort of like instead of one thing, it was like the absence of things that led to that, not dealing with certain
And
things.
then like it comes like a unsubconscious like feeling of I feel a certain way and I don't know why, and I haven't had the tools to deal with that kind of thing.
Do you feel
Okay.
like you okay, so as an adolescent, like your thoughts on therapy, you were always open, or you didn't like view it as like,
That's a good
oh,
question. Yeah, because a lot of people are typically turned off from that at a young age, and
I
you
was
seem
as
very
a
perceptive
teenager.
at it.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah,
oh,
I was.
heck no.
I mean, you guys
Oh my
know me.
God.
I still kind of feel a little weird
I was
about
forced to go to therapy, and
Yeah.
like that was the one and last session because that guy did not want to meet with me
Oh,
again.
yeah.
for sure. No, I get it. And yeah, I definitely agree that it wasn't something I initially knew that I was going to enjoy. It took, some trust and, things like that. But ultimately, I like what you said about like just being an adolescent, like kind of that rebellious kind of thing too. And I didn't like the first person I went to see. That's kind of like how I realized like, oh, let me try it again. Let me just keep trying these things.
So you kind of
It's
had like
not
an
therapy;
open,
it's the person. Kind
yeah,
of.
but that's pretty cool because that's like a mature thought process to have, like with an openness to seek help. Like we try to teach that now.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 16.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
that's
I was
good.
16
Yeah.
when and I also.
Do you feel like you were at a
therapy.
point in life where you like were going through things where you feel like you needed to be open to more help, like, or do you feel like you were just like a normal person and it was just something that happened?
Yeah, it's
Because I feel like you like again, it is something that I don't see often where people are perceptive
But
for
I
that
think
help.
it's also, let me ask you this. How was it, how were you approached with that, with help? Because
From
I
your
think that
family
changes-
standpoint?
Yeah, I'm saying like that could change your openness to
For sure.
support.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of, it seems like in the moment, it's like a last ditch effort, right? Where you're like, nothing else is really working and I need to seek something else. And, you know, I have a great support in my family, especially in my immediate family, but there's only so much that you can do with that.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's the multiple pathways and, you know, the things that,
Yeah.
that you can really utilize from that. And you also shouldn't put that on somebody as directly. I think it needs to be sort of an outside source.
I agree.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
But you know, honestly, even knowing like, you know, the therapist, I didn't grow to, the first one, I didn't grow to engage well with. But even that first session, and I've learned a lot about this as it's something that I'm working towards in my own career now. The power of the first session is huge. Yeah, sorry. Just knowing that you're getting the help that you might need, and knowing that you're engaging and like trying is huge. That impact just on your, you know, mental health is massive.
It is. I would say, because even in peer work, I always say like first engagement is key, right? And so it's so important in that first engagement to really like bring in the almost like the wow factor of like building rapport and like support of like what
I think
laying
that's.
out that
I
foundation
think it's
of
very
what this is gonna
similar
be.
to a lot of things like that, like the gym, going to the dentist. Like that first one sucks. Like if you get it out the way, it really is a mental like hurdle block out of
Yeah.
the way.
And if
Yeah.
it doesn't go right, it
And
can
if
mess
it doesn't
up any
go right,
future.
for sure, you have
Yeah.
a terrible gym session, you ain't going back. If you have a terrible dentist session, like me, I had a horrible dentist experience. That's why my teeth have always been like, ugh.
Yeah, I feel that.
So like, yeah, for sure, that's a
Absolutely.
great point.
Absolutely. So, Brendan, I feel a little bit weird because you and I have built a very strong friendship. I definitely know a lot about your life based on what you've told me, and one part that I definitely want to see if it had played any effect in your wellness journey. I know that you're the son of a police officer. If you're comfortable, I would love if you could share a little bit about how that dynamic could have potentially played a role in your wellness journey.
Of course.
Florida police or
Hollywood specifically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, and I think it's indicative of kind of like, you know, where he grew up. He grew up in Massachusetts, and in a certain time in the 80s and 90s where mental health wasn't something that was at the forefront of conversations when it comes to wellness.
Nope.
It wasn't really a thought.
Mhm.
You know, and so that played into kind of how I grew up too with a father that was in the police force. He was a little bit more militant in that, you know, when it came to mental health. It's something that's just kind of like, I wouldn't say brushed aside because he's great. He's, you know, someone I look up to. I've always looked up to him. But at the same time, there were points in my life that I can look back on to like things that have led to negative self-talk, things like that. And it's a journey that we had been on for a long time when it comes to building our relationship and things that we needed to do in order to, you know, reconcile in that way. And now we're like, you know, best friends.
But I
It's
honestly
crazy,
would
but-
say like that would correlate to like your father as a police officer. So I know the culture of like first responders, like they're trained a specific way. And for them, there's like a fear for themselves of even mentioning any kind of mental health because that can hinder their ability to perform in their job duties. So it is a hard thing for any kind of first responder, whether it be like police officer, fire rescue, or, you know, whatever, military and all those things. The culture surrounding mental health is a scary thing for them.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, they're the most
personally.
suppressed careers that
Correct.
that do that because they
Yeah.
go through the most. You know,
They
you're seeing
do.
dead bodies, you're seeing domestic
Right.
abuse, you're seeing a lot
Yeah.
of things that normal people don't.
But they're trained to
and
have
you're
to be able
suppressing
to,
it.
right? Because
Yeah.
they're trained to have to be
Yeah.
able to show up and operate in the midst of those things that we know are traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have friends that are like fire rescue, law enforcement, and they actually began a peer program, fire rescue, to provide support to that where it's peers, people that have that lived experience, but also have the lived experience of being a first responder, whether it's police, fire rescue.
Yeah.
Because he was telling me like it is hard for a lot of people to even entertain those ideas, and not because they aren't experiencing themselves or don't want to, but it's because of like a fear, and then also like they've had to suppress that and think a certain way in order to be able to continue to show up.
I mean, think
Right.
back to one of our first episodes we ever did. I think actually the third episode we ever did, way back when, Brian Sims.
Yeah.
If you guys remember that episode, he talked a lot about one of the reasons why a lot of people come back from duty and they experience all these adverse effects is because they refuse to share it, or they don't feel comfortable sharing it, or they don't, or I remember he mentioned once, I was looking back at our TikToks and I remember we clipped this, he was talking about how a lot of the times there's this weird culture of like not being allowed
Yeah.
to
Well, sign a weakness, or how am I going to be able
express
to
these feelings.
Yeah, like show up and, there's a robbery and, you know what I mean? Like, it's just that idea. So I always take those things into account when I think of any kind of first responder, because I have an ultimate respect for them, because I also think it's like how they're trained, and they're trained to do that. And to be in that way. So now we're coming in from the aspect of seeing, okay, this may not be as effective as we thought it would be, because we see there's high suicide rates with law enforcement, fire rescue and all of that. We see that there are challenges that happen like within their career and then like out after that. So finding different ways to say like, how do we support individuals that have these high-end stress jobs and also are human beings, even though they're trained to kind of show up and be...
Right. I 100% agree, and I love that you mentioned, the stuff that your friends are doing for, the fire rescue and mental health awareness, because my dad, too, has recently become a champion for, like, first responder mental health. He did a
awesome.
podcast
That's awesome.
talking about his experience. He was specifically, he was in SWAT. He was a homicide detective. So just the things that, he had to experience, you're right. You have to desensitize yourself to those things, because you can't allow yourself to have that weakness, but it can tend to come home with you.
Yeah.
Like
There's certain careers that just don't do well with emotion within them while you're happening. Like imagine trying to be a sniper and you're an emotional person. You're not going to be able to kill anyone.
Yeah, you got to
But at the end of the day, we're
compartmentalize.
humans, and a lot of that stress and trauma has to be dealt with at one point. And in those career fields, they're just not
And
a
that's
lot
why
of the
you
time.
see veterans that are
100%.
like it's so sad. Like our veteran population.
It's
all
usually
that.
people like that. They're dealt
Yeah.
a lot with force and a lot of like very severe stuff.
Yeah.
Fire, like a lot of that stuff could be very heavy to deal with on your mental health.
So, Brendan, you mentioned at the end there that you feel that there could have been times where you saw some of that being brought back into the home. So I'm very curious, and you don't have to get into details, but I'm very curious to hear your perspective on like, how did that aspect of your upbringing affect your mental health?
Of course. Yeah, I mentioned a little bit about the negative self-talk that, I started telling myself when I was young, and that's based on, a lot of things, what other people tell us. That's how we perceive ourselves sometimes. It's unfortunate, but it happens. And, especially when it's, it could be a parent, that doesn't realize what they're saying and what they're doing might have an effect on you. And it's a lot of the times like what they need to tell themselves in those situations. So, if he was at work or something and he was feeling a certain way, what does he tell himself? Now
Like a projection almost.
It's
projection.
projecting.
Yeah, and when you're young and impressionable and dealing with, the other stuff that you're dealing with, it might not seem like it would have an adverse effect, but, just like stop feeling sorry for yourself is something that, I had to cope with and learn how to, manage. That's a small example, but, and when it comes to, I know we were mentioning a little bit about, suicide rates when it comes to first responders, but also, divorce rates is something that is in the
So
it's
true.
like 80%.
Wow.
It's a high rate, and I think it has a lot to do with not being able to turn it off and the
For sure.
stigma, the stigma. It's huge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm very curious to hear, what was the moment you realized something has to change? Or what was the moment where you made that decision, or as many of us have shared in this podcast, the decision was made for you to make that change?
Yeah, I was experiencing a lot when I was a senior in high school. I'm a bit younger, in that respect, although I'm pushing 30. as I'm consistently reminded as the oldest in the youth department.
Oh yeah, we call him dad. It's just the way it is. We
Yeah.
call-
Gosh, I must be grandma.
no. Kayla, you're auntie. Like you're auntie, okay?
It's gonna save your facial hair.
But
I think there was things that I was experiencing that I just like I mentioned earlier wasn't coping well with, and there were some times too, like I mentioned the divorce thing. My parents were splitting up. I was finishing up college. I had some troubles with personal relationships.
That was during high school into college years.
Yeah,
That happening.
Yeah.
it's a transformative,
Interesting time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of change
Yeah.
and what's going on with you internally and then everything around
That's
you.
what I was going through, the most chaotic time of my life, going into college.
Yeah.
Oh my
I think
god.
Same here.
A lot of people
Same
can
here.
relate.
Drinking.
Yeah.
That's when I started going off the deep end.
Right, and there are times when you recognize that it's not your character, and like you mentioned too, you kind of get told that how you're acting, and you don't know. Our
Yeah, you don't
frontal
realize
lobe
it.
hasn't developed, and
Oh
Yep.
gosh, I know.
so
yeah, and I just want to hopefully make what's the thing we do in rap? That wellness point. What is it? Wellness connection?
Yeah.
I want to make a wellness connection with you right now because you just reminded me, like during that transition between high school and college is when my parents started having conversations about splitting up.
Right.
And my family made a very extreme move, if you will, like a chessboard, where my family, my mom, myself, and my little brother, we moved to the mountains, and my dad stayed inland, or not inland, but
In the city.
in the city.
Mhm.
And that extreme separation happened during my first years of college. And I remember it was such that I would argue that was the year where my mental health journey started, if you will. That was the year where things started going significantly down. So I definitely relate to what you're saying. But one thing I do want to mention to Steve, you have went through this experience because I went through this. How much of it do you feel now looking back? How much of that experience became some sort of like a blame story in your life? Because in my experience, even though I knew I wasn't quote unquote at fault when that happened, especially during those first 2 years of college, a lot of blame I started to give myself, and like what part did I play in this decision that was being made in my family? So I'm curious if, and the answer can be no, that's fine. But I'm very curious to hear if there were any of those feelings rising up from that situation back then.
right. First, I think it's important to mention just like how lucky I am because my parents are just as individuals incredible people. So I'm very lucky in that. And the things I was even mentioning with my dad, like it comes down to the product of his environment rather than who he was.
Yeah.
Of course.
And who
Yeah.
he is,
I've met your
especially-
dad. He's a
Oh,
great
Are
guy.
you are you the first child or
I'm the youngest.
You're the
Oh,
youngest.
you're the
Okay.
baby.
Youngest of two.
Okay, so
He's
they've
still
had a child before
baby.
you. And
Yeah,
how
my
old
brother.
is he or
My
she?
brother's 30. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 years older.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, we grew up in very, similar, generations. So
Yeah. I think that's important to ask because a lot of times, let's say if there's a 10, 15-year gap, you understand what you're
Oh,
doing
of
wrong
course.
and what not to do with the next child. Like
course. Right.
my family, Nevaeh's killing it. She's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
college, doing, and then you look at the rest of us, we're like, why did we make all these wrong air moves? For Nevaeh, we did it for Nevaeh.
Right. No, I know. Yeah, exactly.
But truly, that's how it kind of happens a lot of the time. It's like sometimes you get the short end of the stick. If I always say like parents don't have an instruction manual.
Yeah.
There's no thing that it's saying you got to do this for your kid when they do this. When they're gonna get suspended, they need to do this. There's nothing that tells them what to do.
No.
So
Yeah.
whatever kid you have, whatever cards you're dealt, and they're mischievous, you're gonna have to deal with that.
You have to play with the cards.
Well, Exactly.
I'm lucky enough too to have the hindsight of perspective, especially when I was even that age, because you mentioned if there was like a blame game kind of being played. Both of my parents grew up with just one parent, essentially, and so my dad grew up without a dad. My mom grew up primarily with her dad, but her mom was of course in their life, but it was just different environment. So it's something that I was able to put on them and say like they didn't have those, like prior things to go off of, and what they experienced. They experienced things and taught us based on how
What they know. Yeah.
what they know,
Yeah.
and they did an incredible job.
And did you realize that after the fact, or during the time?
Oh, and it kind of goes into your question about the blame game, and I'm lucky. That's why I was mentioning to say no. Like I didn't blame.
You had like a good perspective of
Yeah.
what was happening at the time it was
That's
happening.
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's a
No,
lot
for
of
sure.
like self-awareness and like
Yeah.
just the understanding of like, you know, when people, because I think that, and your point, Christian, is like at some point we get to that point, but like it may take us first internalizing, then actually like as we mature in our thought processes, maybe we get some healing, we understand like, okay, they did the best they could with what they knew and what they had.
Yeah.
That's how
And-
my situation was with my
Yeah.
mom, and like seeing my mom do all the crap she did back in the day, and then like now I obviously understand like it was a part of her life that was rough. But even during the time it was happening, I had like an unconscious like understanding of it, you know, like almost to a degree that what you're saying. That's why I find it interesting, because like when I would explain that myself, like most people really don't understand that. They don't get like how you could be in such a weird place but somehow get it or understand it. I guess it's just because you're there and your mind subconsciously like figures out a safe space or like a way to cope through things. I don't know what it is.
No, you're
Yeah.
right.
But mine was very subconscious. Like mine was like,
Yeah.
I did similar things and used similar strategies you did, but I had no idea I was doing them. Versus like it seems like you had like an idea of like it was happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it just because it was a long time coming. It was one of those things that didn't just happen one day. It was you know, writing on the wall. So I sort of braced for it, but also you know just having the support that I did in the both of them and everything they do has been for my brother and I, which is incredible.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And I'm happy to report dating each other again. So
Oh.
they've been dating for
Interesting.
the last 4 or 5 years now.
That's
So
awesome.
For the first time in like a decade, since I moved back almost a year ago, you know, it's the first time we've all been in the same house for.
That's so interesting.
It's so awesome.
like
Yeah,
10
it's so
years.
cool.
I was gonna say weird, but that's a terrible
No,
word. But
it's
that's
a
like
great
super
thing.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like you don't hear stuff
Yeah.
like
It
that
doesn't
ever.
happen a lot. Yeah, that's like
Never.
me and my relationship with.
You know that
with
doesn't happen
Coop's dad.
ever.
It just doesn't.
Oh
it's
yeah,
not-
true. Your relationship, yeah.
Like we went years.
Yeah,
You know, and it's
that
just
is
like,
true.
Yeah.
That does
I-
not happen.
Sometimes
I don't-
that's what it
yeah,
is.
I don't want to
Yeah.
speak to your situation.
That's
but
awesome.
When it comes to my parents, I think it was a testament to who they are as people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really
Yeah.
was. you
It
know,
is,
the
yeah.
moment that,
And when you go through a hard time, because that's like with me and Coop's dad, Mark, is like, you know, what we reflected in that time, like that was our time where we were going through our own things, you know, and it wasn't that we didn't love each other. We just really didn't know how to love each other through all of that.
Yeah.
And so both getting the healing that we needed, that love was rekindled because it was a love that was always there, but it was a love that wasn't healthy. And it was because of
Yeah.
where we were in our seasons. And so I think the separation was a blessing, right? But I always tell people like what's meant to be will always be.
Yeah.
And that's God has taught me how to like truly let go and surrender those things because I trust that like my life's gonna unfold the way it's supposed to.
Right.
So it
I
is
like that.
it is a cool
Yeah.
thing.
My dad has a saying, and you know, I'm sure he's watching, so that's great. It's the saying is, "You're always where you're supposed to be," and that's something that you know, even though we're not entirely spiritual people, it's something that I feel like is very cosmic in that, where
Yeah.
like, you know, you're going through the stuff you're going through. It could be bad for a reason.
Yeah.
It's to end
Yeah.
up where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, God has a plan for us all. Like you said, not to be spiritual, but like,
It can be.
yeah,
It can be.
Yeah.
there's a plan for us all. You know.
So, one of the biggest questions that we like to get to the bottom of here on the podcast is the why. In every conversation that we've ever had since we started this whole My Story Matters way like almost 2 years ago, is the why. So, I know that you mentioned earlier that it was kind of like an amalgamation of different things, but could you pinpoint one specific aspect of your life that you feel kind of was like the overarching connection in every phase where you started to feel your mental health being noticeable? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no,
like,
it does. And I think I've been kind of thinking about it the whole time too, just because I do want to make sure I answer properly, but in a way too that is representative of what I went through. But I think if I could, you know, kind of tie it all together with one knot, it's just that I'm a very sensitive person. I always have been, which is kind of like my why to why I do what I do now and why I want to do what I do. So, you know, the things that I went through, they hit me so hard. And so it's hard. Yeah, I can't really pinpoint an exact moment. Like I said, I can point to a moment where I knew I needed it.
Yeah.
But,
No, and the reason I asked the question is because I'm in the same boat where I can't really pinpoint, other than like, obviously I could be like, well, my parents' separation really affected me, so I guess that's where it started. But looking back on my story, I agree with you. It's like I can't really, it was kind of like an amalgamation of different things that were happening at the time. And my self-image and growing up being like bullied is like, there's a different mix of different things that were happening during my life that led to what I do today, like you mentioned, and why I needed to seek therapy and help, right? So,
well, to that, I can definitely say that it was other people's perception of me that really brought me down, and and it was in that formative time when I was transitioning between high school and college, and letting it affect me to that point. And there's a time when you do let some of that stuff affect you, but only if it's for like constructive reasons.
Yeah.
And if you trust the person and their judgment of you.
Yeah.
But it can't be just pure judgment, and it can't be something that you constantly hear. So
yeah.
Would you say that most of your conflicts or things that would arrive were coming from external issues or internal issues?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Absolutely, a little bit of both.
Because I've seen like, again, like my situation with my mom was very subconscious, so I feel like I never really had like that level of I guess it was always an external factor that affected me, and it never an external factor. But like the internal, it didn't hit me consciously; it hit me subconsciously, which affected my external. Right. So I always wonder, like, is it the bullying or like people outside your life that are telling you certain things, or is it more so coming like from the family and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, when I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder.
Okay.
So those were literal like internal like chemical imbalances that I just was diagnosed with having. So so I was on medication for a while, and those were things that helped to. And I wouldn't say it was a crutch, but it was something that I could lean on and say like, okay, well, at least I'm able to pinpoint, why I'm feeling like this.
Right.
And there's tons of things that might, like the multiple pathways, just like there are multiple ways to break down somebody. And
Yeah.
Oh, that's I like that message. Is like the same way that there's multiple ways to recover. There's also multiple ways to bring somebody down. So
For sure.
it's
Yeah.
very true.
I always talk about the perfect storm. Yeah. There's like, it's never just like one thing. And I think that recovery is such a like, person-centered experience, right? So that like the way we recover, all of us, is like different, but also the things that cause us the need to recover is also going to be different. There we'll find similarities and connections and things like that, but each person I think is different, and it's so personalized to what their need was. So that being said, what does recovery really mean to you today now?
I mentioned this in one of our trainings, and it's just so true, and I came up with it on the fly, but I liked it.
I love
it
it.
was that it was the hope factor of it, and what does that really mean? But to me, it meant like a future is like caring about my future. Recovery meant to me like doing the things that I needed to do so that I can be well and envision the things that I wanted for myself. I think for a lot of us when we're growing up, we're told we need to figure out what we want to do, and I didn't really have that plan for myself, but I ended up getting into film, which is a huge part of my journey, and the fact that I'm a creative person and was able to pursue that is a big switch from what I'm doing now. But at the same time, it was something that, right now, no.
Right now, and then
There's a
workshops
camera,
that we do.
Yeah.
I don't know how different it is.
I think it's like
but
interconnected
but I get
to
it,
what
though.
you do.
Sure, yeah, and I'm able to utilize it.
You're able to utilize that in order to find mental health and stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you create it's like your workshop proposal, right? Creative outlets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like
how-
my mom's wellness is being here 100 hours a week. So
Wow, called out.
everyone has their wellness. Like truly, like this
Yeah,
is your,
yeah.
by doing those certain things. And
I agree. No, I definitely
that's
agree.
your wellness.
Well, because I think that we are, as creatures, we are creators, and it doesn't matter. Like art is in many forms. It is not just painting on a canvas, but life is the canvas, and
For sure. That's what I think. Everybody's an artist. It's up to them to find their canvas or their
that
purpose.
is, right? And you'll know because when you get into like purpose, things that are like really your parte and something that you enjoy, you get into this like flow of it, and you feel like time is like there's no time. Like you could just keep doing what you're doing because there's an enjoyment to it. Doesn't mean you're not working, because I do believe, I know people say like, oh, I never have to work a day in my life. No, I think it's hard work to show up every day in your purpose, but it's like work that you want to do because it is fulfilling and rewarding outside
There's
of the
a huge
financial.
difference between working for like a paycheck and working for something that fully
Your passion,
fulfills
yeah.
you.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
even think about the time spent at all.
No, yeah.
Not at all.
I find it comes very organically, like to who I am and like what I want to do, and that's what makes this work not easy, but you know,
Yeah.
just
So what do you want to do? Like what is your aspirations and dreams today as a person in recovery?
Yeah, so that's always changed. You know, it's changed with my purpose, which you know seems fairly new. But I have some aspirations in the film world and creating and making films and writing films. Christian and I are working on, you know, tons of projects and you know stuff that we talk about. But when it comes to my career and like what I want to do, I think you know being here has really shaped that, and I want to be able to, you know, continue counseling and mentoring and just helping people. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moral of the
awesome.
story, be the Bob Ross or Steven Spielberg of your life, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was cooking that one in my brain. that whole conversation.
watch
I was
back
just
and you'll
waiting
be
for
thinking.
you see my brain going, Well, is there one final, I guess you can say, moral or lesson that you want to share with the
Yeah.
viewers? One
Or a
final
piece of advice.
piece of advice that you want to share in regards to your story and everything we talked about today.
Yeah, of course. It's something that you know I always champion, and it's the idea of just being more empathetic. You know, I think that we're currently in a empathy epidemic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, you know, being able to put yourself into someone's shoes before judging, and in every aspect of that, you know, is very important. So. Yeah.
We just
Or
had,
we can do that again.
Yeah,
maybe,
wait,
or-
maybe we gotta do that one again. Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and ask you just answer it again, because I'll just cut it from the
Okay.
question.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's just for everybody, a call for everybody to be more empathetic. I think we're in an empathy epidemic, unfortunately, in the current state of things, and you know I don't think it'll hurt anybody to just be a little bit more understanding. And I think the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is something that you know pays back tenfold.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it leads to a lot of different good outcomes. I don't think there's anything bad about you know being empathetic. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great point you made. I think a lot of people are lacking empathy in this world. There may be a lot of people that are sympathetic, and that will be like, "Oh, that sucks." Like, sorry, you're dealing with that.
And
like,
walk right
like
by you.
Palestine, like the whole Palestine
So
situation. That's
crazy.
sorry to bring that up, but like stuff like that, you know, like sorry, you know, but like putting yourself in their shoes and actually
Yeah,
understanding that perspective.
it's a
There are
whole-
so many people that
It's
are
a horrible
like,
Or will-
situation. Yeah.
don't want it, like you said, not willing, or
Well,
you
yeah,
know.
Yeah.
Some people need like an example, and you know they need to see and hear like ways they can help. Other people, you know, like I mentioned, I've been pretty sensitive. I remember being a young kid crying in front of the TV watching like the tsunamis in 2008.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
ways that I can help. So like, you know, I not to say that it's always come naturally. It's just something that I can't help for me.
Yeah.
But for others, it has to be worked on, and it's something that you need to be mindful of, and it helps. And you know, I'm a champion when it comes to the cause that you just brought up. When it comes to Palestine, like I'm huge on talking to people about that, the perspectives and the stories, and it's just you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know either side, but I think it's important whether any country or any place is going through something to have empathy and put
100%,
yourself
Yeah,
in
and to
there.
talk about it. too.
Yeah, and to talk about it. Yeah, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Well, Brendan, I just want to say thank you. Man, not only thank you for sharing your story, but I want to welcome you to the team. So excited to have you here. You're going to start seeing Brendan in every single episode that we make moving forward. He's going to be helping us come up with ideas, record, definitely trying to get more people on the podcast as well for interviewing. So please in the comments, welcome Brendan, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with everyone you want. I know that you're going to share it with your family for
Absolutely.
sure.
And let us know in the comments if you don't want Brendan here too, because that's very important.
Yeah,
democracy. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
no, don't do that, please, because
It's
we
It's
will
like
not
Brandon
look at them.
Burner writing in it. hate this guy.
It's like Chloe, Brendan's #1 hater. Take him out the podcast.
Sent by anonymous.
Sent by anonymous.
Get it out. Love
We
Chloe.
know who. We know who.
No, I
Anyway,
think she'd be loud and proud about that.
to our audio listeners, we appreciate you listening on. Please also share the podcast with everybody, and make sure you give us 5 stars if you can, please. That always helps. Other than that, this has been a great episode, and we will see you all next time. Bye
Be
bye.
well.